Virtually, virtually anyone who spent any time looking into the secret societies behind the panorama of conspiratorial activity in this country and around the world has undoubtedly become familiar with Freemasonry, and in turn with the infamous G that's so often incorporated into the square and compass logo. And cursory explanations will delve into the notion of the Freemasonic God, or the Grand Architect, whom they ultimately point to as being Lucifer, of course. But this G is also said to represent the so-called generative principle, and I found a pretty good explanation of it here. I found an explanation that says, it conceives of the divine nature as residing in man, and that it is especially active and expressive in the sexual passion, and that the gratification of this passion is pleasing to the deity and is the duty of the Mason. It aims to make passion, therefore, sacred by making its gratification a moral and religious duty. On its theological side, Freemasonry is a sort of pantheism, the deity being the generative principle, the reproductive power which pervades all animated nature. And as this power inheres in man, it is viewed as incarnate in humanity in toto, thus establishing man's union and unity with the divine nature. Now, none of this is really anything new, but what's something that's really been persistent in my inquiries lately towards the possibility of a true enclosed flat Earth, and the following realization that heliocentrism is a component of the broader evolutionary lie. The more I think about all this, the more it very much seems to me that the whole NASA paradigm, if we could call it that, in many ways serves to essentially indoctrinate the masses not just with lies, but lies that are actually materialistic or scientistic versions of ancient occult or Luciferian doctrines. And the subject of Freemasonry is actually a pretty perfect example of helping us to comprehend this, because we can look at all the layers and levels or degrees of Masonry itself, and we can recognize how the lower entry-level degrees are really quite oblivious to the hardened satanic belief system that's propelling the entire thing. At the lower levels, they sincerely do just believe that they are part of some kind of altruistic, charitable fraternity, and at the same time, while they're in those stages, they're being presented with shallow, sort of hollowed-out explanations of the symbolism and the rituals that they're participating in. And if they continue to progress in the Brotherhood, they will eventually become privy to the deeper meanings, quote unquote. Now, if we can fairly easily recognize Darwinian evolution to be a repackaged Luciferian doctrine, masked in the guise of humanistic science, then when pondering the false cosmology of Copernicanism, I have to say that the theory of gravity does also seem to be another one of these ancient mystical concepts that has been repackaged and reintroduced into the masses as a, quote, scientific fact. After all, gravity is not merely taught to be the pulling force produced by humongous collections of mass, such as stars, planets, and moons, etc., but it's also the very force which is alleged to have pulled all these celestial bodies together in the first place. According to the Big Bang, from the original singularity sprang forth all the physical matter that is now constantly being flung outward in every direction in an ever-expanding universe. But that matter from the singularity then had to begin forming all the elementary particles, as described from Wikipedia here, in this insanely convoluted manner. In the most common models, the universe was filled homogenously and isotropically with a very high energy density and huge temperatures and pressures that was very rapidly expanding and cooling. Approximately 10 to 37 seconds into the expansion, a phase transition caused a cosmic inflation during which the universe grew exponentially. After inflation stopped, the universe consisted of a quark gluon plasma, as well as all other elementary particles. Temperatures were so high that the random motions of particles were at relativistic speeds, and particle-antiparticle pairs and kinds were being continuously created and destroyed in collisions. At some point, an unknown reaction called baryogenesis violated the conservation of baryon number, leading to a very small excess of quarks and leptons over antiquarks and antileptons, of the order of 1 part in 30 million. This resulted in the predominance of matter over antimatter in the present universe. Of course, this is pure nonsense, but if you throw in enough impressive sounding words, then you can make it appear quite scientific indeed. First, the elementary particles somehow are formed in all the heat and from an explosion which occurs for who knows for what reason. Then those particles somehow form into atoms, and then the atoms form into various periodic elements, and then the elements into molecules, and so on and so forth. Evolution is without question a mystical belief system at its core. And so now in the context of flat Earth research and the knowledge that NASA is basically a Freemasonic institution, it's interesting, don't you think, to ponder that old G in the middle of the square compass in light of how evolution and gravity are more or less watered down, materialized versions of what are really mystical occult precepts. This whole idea is one that I'm continuing to explore on a number of fronts. This idea that there's various elements of the Copernican cosmology that are all actually various pieces of ancient mysticism and occultism that have been repackaged in a modernistic, scientific veneer. And so I also suspect that the whole subject of the planets is again sort of another example of the same sort of thing. So I'm going to have to do a video on that later.